What if I told you that some of the smartest, most normal people in history, doctors, lawyers, teachers, looked at a guy claiming to be an alien and said, "Yeah, that tracks." No red flags or hesitation. Just, "Yeah, this man is definitely a spaceship pilot, and I will follow him anywhere." And the scariest part? Every single cult on this list started with people who thought they were making the smart choice. Today, we're covering 6 of the most terrifying cults that ever existed. And trust me, by the end of this video, you will never look at a self-help seminar the same way again. Let's start in California, because of course we do. If there's one place on Earth where someone can show up with zero money, zero plan, and somehow convince a group of people that he is the chosen one, it's California in the 1960s. Now picture this. A short guy, barely 5'2", walks out of prison in 1967 with literally nothing but a guitar and an almost supernatural ability to talk. He has spent more of his life behind bars than outside of them. He has no job, no house, no real future by any conventional measure. Within 2 years, he has a following of devoted members who call themselves a family. They live together, eat together, and eventually, at his instruction, kill together. His name was Charles Manson. And the reason his story is so disturbing isn't the violence. It's how ordinary everything looked before it turned. So Manson had a gift. Not music. He tried that. It didn't work out, which honestly might be the most important detail in this entire story. He had a gift for finding people who felt invisible and making them feel seen. Mostly young women who had drifted away from their families, dropped out of school, ended up on the streets of San Francisco. He told them they were special, that society had failed them, not the other way around, that he alone understood the truth about the world. The truth, according to Manson, was that a race war was coming. He called it Helter Skelter. Yes, named after a Beatles song, because nothing says apocalyptic prophecy like borrowing your ideology from a British pop band. He believed this war was inevitable, and when it kept rudely refusing to start on its own, Manson decided his family would give it a little push. In the summer of 1969, his followers carried out a series of killings across Los Angeles. 9 people were killed. The victims were chosen not because of who they were, but because of the message Manson wanted to send. He wanted chaos. He wanted the whole country to panic. What he got instead was a life sentence. He died in prison in 2017 at 83 years old. Several of his followers are still incarcerated today. Some of them spent over 50 years behind bars for crimes they committed as teenagers because one man told them it was the right thing to do. That's the thing about cults. The leader rarely suffers the most. It's always the people who believed him. Now, if Manson's story is disturbing because of how violent it was, the next one is disturbing for the exact opposite reason. No rage, no chaos, no war. Just 39 very calm, very peaceful adults who packed a bag, put on matching black outfits, and waited for a spaceship. I genuinely cannot think of a more polite way to describe it. This was Heaven's Gate. Founded in the 1970s by a former music teacher who became convinced, after what he described as a near-death experience, that he was literally an extraterrestrial being sent to Earth on a mission. His followers believed the human body was just a temporary container. A rental car, essentially. And once you were done with it, you returned it and moved on to the next level. A higher existence waiting somewhere out in space. For about 20 years, they lived quietly. No violence, no weapons. They had a web design business. They made a decent website. They seemed, by most accounts, odd like perfectly pleasant people who had some unconventional views about the cosmos. Then, in 1995, the Hale-Bopp comet appeared in the sky. And to Heaven's Gate, that wasn't just an astronomical event. That was their Uber arriving. They believed a spacecraft was trailing behind that comet, sent specifically to collect them. In March 1997, all 39 members were found in a mansion in San Diego. Each one was lying in the exact same position. Each had a purple shroud placed neatly over them. Each had packed a small travel bag for the journey ahead. They had even filmed farewell videos beforehand. Calm, smiling, excited almost. The spacecraft, for the record, never came. But here is the detail that I cannot stop thinking about. The Heaven's Gate website is still online today, maintained by 2 surviving members who chose not to go. Still up. Still waiting. Still explaining the mission to anyone who stumbles across it. If that doesn't make you close your laptop and go touch some grass, I don't know what will. Both Manson and Heaven's Gate were terrifying in completely different ways. One used anger, one used peace. But neither of them, not even close, caused the kind of damage that one man managed to do with nothing but a microphone, a Bible, and a one-way ticket to South America. That story is next. Imagine you're living in San Francisco in the early 1970s. The city is buzzing. Civil rights movements, anti-war protests, people genuinely trying to build a more equal world. And in the middle of all that energy, there's this preacher. Charismatic, passionate, racially integrated congregation at a time when that was genuinely radical. He's feeding the homeless. He's housing the elderly. Politicians are lining up to be photographed with him. He seems, by every possible measure, like one of the good guys. His name was Jim Jones. And the fact that he seemed like one of the good guys, that's exactly what made everything that followed so devastating. Jones had built something real. The People's Temple wasn't just a church. It was a community. Tens of thousands of members across California, genuine political influence. Young people from all walks of life who believed that this man was fighting for something that mattered. But behind closed doors, Jones was a completely different person. Members were controlled down to the smallest detail. Who they could talk to, what they could eat, how much they were allowed to sleep. Those who questioned him were publicly humiliated in front of the entire congregation. Those who tried to leave were told that the government was watching, that the KKK was waiting outside, that there was nowhere safe to go. And then the press started asking questions. So Jones did what any totally not suspicious person would do. He moved 1,000 of his followers to a patch of jungle in South America and called it Paradise. Jonestown, Guyana, built from scratch in the middle of nowhere. No internet, obviously, no easy way in or out. So just Jim Jones, a loudspeaker that broadcast his voice across the entire compound at all hours, and about 1,000 people who had given up everything to be there. Life in Jonestown was, by every survivor account, a slow-moving nightmare. Food was scarce. Work was brutal. Jones, who by this point was deep into drug addiction, would broadcast rambling, paranoid speeches through the speakers at 3 in the morning. Members were sleep-deprived, malnourished, and completely cut off from the outside world. And then a U.S. congressman decided to pay a visit. Leo Ryan flew to Jonestown in November 1978 to investigate reports of abuse. Jones put on a show, a dinner, some music, everything looked fine. But as Ryan's group was preparing to leave, several members slipped them handwritten notes. "Please get us out." Ryan agreed to take them. Jones smiled and waved them off. Then he sent armed guards to the airstrip. Ryan and 4 others were killed before they could board their plane. Back at the compound, Jones gathered everyone in the main pavilion and announced it was time for what he called, and I want you to register how he phrased this, revolutionary self-killing. On November 18, 1978, 912 people died in Jonestown. It remains one of the largest single-day losses of American civilian life in history. And the phrase "drinking the Kool-Aid," which people now casually throw around to mean blindly following something, comes directly from this day. Except it wasn't even Kool-Aid. It was Flavor Aid. The brand got the wrong reputation for eternity, which feels like a very unfair footnote to one of history's darkest events. Now. If Jonestown was the cult the whole world saw coming and somehow still couldn't stop, the Order of the Solar Temple was the one almost nobody saw at all. And that honestly makes it worse. This was a secret society, operating simultaneously across Switzerland, Canada, and France. Members were wealthy, educated, respectable, judges, doctors, business people. From the outside, it looked like an elite social club with some eccentric spiritual beliefs. From the inside, members were being told that the world was ending and that death was simply a doorway to rebirth on a distant star called Sirius. Between 1994 and 1997, over 70 members died across 3 separate incidents in 3 different countries. Some chose to go. Many did not get that choice. The leaders were never found. And somewhere out there, a star called Sirius is minding its own business, completely unaware of the chaos done in its name. Every cult so far had one thing in common: the damage stayed inside. The victims were almost always members themselves. Now imagine a cult that looked at the outside world and said, "No, actually, everyone is the target. No jungle, no remote compound, no warning. Just 5 men, 5 bags, and the busiest subway system on the planet on a Monday morning. March 20th, 1995. Tokyo. It's a Monday morning. Rush hour. Millions of people doing exactly what they do every single Monday. Coffee, train, work. Nobody is thinking about anything more dramatic than whether they remembered to charge their phone. 5 men board 5 separate subway trains. Each one is carrying a bag wrapped in newspaper. Each one knows exactly what is inside that bag. Each one has been told that what they are about to do is not murder. It is salvation. That the people around them, the commuters reading newspapers and checking their watches, are doomed souls who cannot be saved any other way. At a precise, coordinated moment, all 5 men drop their bags, puncture them with the tip of an umbrella, and walk off the train. Within minutes, thousands of people cannot breathe. Now, to understand how a group of people ended up releasing nerve gas on a subway, you have to go back about a decade earlier, to a half-blind yoga teacher in Japan who started having some very specific ideas about the end of the world. His name was Shoko Asahara, and on the surface he was about as threatening as a wellness podcast. He started a small yoga class in Tokyo in the mid-1980s. He wrote books. He talked about spiritual enlightenment. He attracted the kind of followers you wouldn't expect: engineers, doctors, scientists, university graduates, genuinely intelligent people who were looking for meaning, and found someone who spoke with absolute certainty. That certainty is the weapon every cult leader on this list has used. Not money, not threats. Or just the intoxicating feeling of being around someone who acts like they have all the answers. Asahara's answers got progressively darker. The yoga class became a religion. The religion became a doomsday movement. And the doomsday movement eventually became something that governments genuinely struggled to categorize. Because it wasn't just a cult anymore. It was operating like a small, highly motivated nation-state. At its peak, Aum Shinrikyo had over 40,000 members across Japan, Russia, the United States, and Australia. They had front companies, political candidates, and, most terrifyingly, a dedicated team of scientists working on chemical and biological weapons. They tested sarin gas on sheep at a remote farm in Australia. They attempted multiple attacks before Tokyo. They were building towards something enormous. And almost nobody outside the group knew any of it. The Tokyo subway attack on March 20th killed 13 people and sent over 6,000 to hospitals. Passengers described not understanding what was happening. Just a sudden burning in their eyes, an inability to breathe, people collapsing around them on a perfectly ordinary Monday morning. Asahara was arrested 2 months later, hiding in a room at the cult's compound. He was eventually executed in 2018 along with several senior members. But here is the part that should make you deeply uncomfortable. The cult still exists. It reformed under a new name, Aleph, and continues to operate in Japan under strict government surveillance to this day, recruiting new members, running its organization. 30 years later, the subway attack happened once. The group that carried it out never fully went away. So we've covered cults from the 60s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. And if you're sitting there thinking, well, at least this kind of thing doesn't happen anymore, the last story on this list is going to ruin your entire week. Because this one didn't make headlines in 1978. It made headlines in 2023. In 2023, while most of us were arguing about Netflix shows and complaining about inflation, a man in Kenya was quietly overseeing the deaths of over 400 people in a forest. Not centuries ago, not decades ago, 2 years ago. His name was Paul Mackenzie, and about 10 years before any of this happened, he was driving a taxi in Nairobi. Completely ordinary. Nothing about him would have made you look twice. Then one day, he announced that God had personally called him. He started preaching. Small crowds at first, then bigger ones. He had a YouTube channel, a Facebook page, a television program called, and this is the actual name, End Time Messages, which in hindsight was about as subtle as a billboard. His message was simple. The world was ending. Modern life was corrupt. Schools were satanic. Hospitals were satanic. Your government ID cards were satanic. Essentially, anything that might give his followers an independent life or a way out was, according to Mackenzie, deeply satanic. He was arrested multiple times before 2023, released every single time. The authorities kept letting him go, and he kept going, moving further from the city, deeper into his ideology, and eventually deeper into an 800-acre forest in Kalifi County called Shakahola. He told his followers to sell everything they owned, hand him the money, and move to the forest. He offered them plots of land for less than $100, a fresh start, a sanctuary from the corrupt world outside. What they got instead was something far darker. In March 2023, a man walked into a police station in Nairobi. His wife and daughter had traveled to join Mackenzie's community weeks earlier. They hadn't come back. They weren't answering. He was worried. Police went to investigate. What they found in that forest stopped them cold. Shallow graves, emaciated survivors who had to be physically carried out. People so deep in starvation they were refusing food even as rescuers were trying to save them. Some of them were still following instructions from a man who was, at that point, sitting in a police station being questioned about the whole situation. As authorities dug deeper into the forest, literally, the numbers kept climbing. 100 bodies, then 200, then 400, then beyond. Autopsies showed deaths from starvation, suffocation, and blunt trauma. Some bodies were missing organs entirely. Mackenzie had apparently planned the deaths in phases. An organized, yikes staged process of dying, presented to followers as the fastest path to heaven. He is currently on trial for 191 counts of murder. As of mid-2025, investigators were still finding new graves. So here's what 6 cults across 6 decades actually teach us. None of these leaders had any special power. Manson was a failed musician. Jones was a paranoid preacher. Asahara was a yoga teacher. Mackenzie drove a taxi. Not one of them was extraordinary in any conventional sense. What they had was the ability to find people in pain and offer them something that felt like relief. Belonging, purpose, certainty, the feeling that someone finally understood them. And that is not a weakness unique to cult members. That is just being human. The difference between the people who fell in and the people who didn't is far smaller than any of us would like to admit, which is exactly why these stories are worth knowing.